Here's a fun fact to start this video. Pokémon is the single largest entertainment franchise ever. That's internationally, across all forms of media, in all of history. Even discounting mobile downloads, Nintendo and Game Freak have sold over 480 million games, and that's not to mention the absurd revenue generated by the TCG, anime and merchandise, which is somewhere in the realms of a sweet $10 billion annually. Yet, despite all of those extremely impressive milestones, Pokémon has had scarcely a mention in the SRB2 modding scene, with apparently nothing more than representation in SRB2K and SRB2 Persona, and a few abandoned projects from the noughties. It wasn't until February 2025, more than 5 years after V2.2 released, that a modder by the name of PikaJade would live up to their name and release a mod containing everyone's favourite electric rodent. But in all seriousness, how is that Pokemon? Is it worth playing? Is there a spark of inspiration? Or does it deserve to be the first mod that you discharge? Let's find out. I had a blast using Pikachu by adopting an agile playstyle. True to form, he, and we know the Pikachu is male based on his tail, is a speedy little critter, and just like every Pokemon, he only needs 4 abilities to get the job done. His most important ability is the iconic Volt Tackle, enveloping the mouse in an electric field that allows him to fly into the air for up to 1 second, which is a fair bit more generous than may initially sound, although it's far from the ability to fly or something. You can then use Iron Tail to blast forwards and destroy everything you come into contact with, or use Thunder if you need to ground yourself more quickly, / power a spring, / destroy an enemy. Finally, you can use Custom 1 to trigger Double Team, temporarily vibrating fast enough to theoretically pass through obstacles and parry attacks. I say theoretically, of course, because just like every other parry mechanic I've ever experimented with in SRB2, I could never get the timing right. And with that, I've explained his entire moveset. Just like the Pokemon franchise proper, there is a devotion to simplicity that almost becomes admirable. I kid. Mostly. But in all seriousness, there isn't too much here below the surface, nothing to keep an eye on during your journey, and not a whole lot of room to improve beyond your basic ability to play SRB2. The Iron Tail can help build up a lot of momentum if used correctly, and Thunder is obviously intended to be used as an air brake, but after about 2.5 hours, that's about all of the depth I've been able to mine. If you do decide to pick Pikachu up, you should expect something similar to the true Pokemon experience. Sallow, beginner-friendly fun. Of course, the Pokemon games are still fun despite their simplicity, and Pikachu is much the same. I may not have felt like I was being particularly smart or skilled while playing, but I can't lie, flying over big pits of lava or narrowly making a long jump before maintaining that momentum using an Iron Tail was a rush every time. With a forgiving vertical ability, powerful horizontal ability, and a dangerous attack, Pikachu is a jack of all trades and master of most. I was able to get some good times without much need for practice. He's quite a reactive character, able to get out of difficult situations or return to the intent path after a mistake quite easily. So there isn't the pressure for perfection and refinement that you can get with some other, less versatile characters, but that versatility doesn't feel unearned like it can for more powerful characters. He strikes a good balance between ease of use and power. You can do well quite easily and with minimal practice, but it's never going to look quite as flashy or be quite as quick as it could do as a trade-off. The only real complaint I have regarding Pikachu's abilities is with the Volt Tackle, and how it's not really a Volt Tackle at all. It's useful, sure, but come on. I barely play or interact with anything Pokemon or Pokemon adjacent, but even I can tell what a Volt Tackle should look and feel like, and this is not it. The obvious instinct would have been to make it something like a homing attack or multi-thok, much like Inazuma's Bolt Stream, and I understand why that was ultimately rejected in favour of the form it ended up taking. It would overlap with Iron Tail too much and leave Pikachu with no verticality to fix any mistakes made while using Thunder. I do think it's a good thing that wasn't the course of action taken, but I think tweaks could be made to the current ability to allow it to fill its current needs while still being more of a Volt Tackle. The first step would be to make it faster and definitely to give it less of a gradient in favour of a more direct upwards or forwards movement. I also think that the choice to require the jump button to be held the entire time during use instills the wrong idea in the player's mind, making it seem like more of an active energy shield rather than an immediate burst of speed. So I think that it could either be made into more of a series of directional boosts performed each time the button is tapped, or it should only work once the button is released, and the length of time it's held affects how far the ability travels. It would be an extensive edit either way, but I think it would allow it to fulfill its current needs sufficiently, while also being more accurate in interpretation of the ability. Rather than attempt to imitate the SRB2 art style, PikaJade has instead decided to follow in the footsteps of games like Donkey Kong Country or the original Doom. Rather than make unique sprites for each animation from scratch, each animation frame is an edited screenshot of a model, either computer generated or physical, I can't quite tell, as it carries out the movement required. It doesn't blend in with the rest of the game world as a whole, but I think it's a style that works fairly well for Pikachu. The majority of the time, the artists for each Pokemon game put very little effort into making Pikachu, or indeed any Pokemon, actually look like a living, breathing animal, so he's always had the vibe of a plastic toy for me. Too smooth, too on model, too perfect to be an organic life form. I think a lot of the same criticisms that are levied in the current complaints about Sonic's models also apply to Pikachu, and maybe even more so. Intentionally or not, I think the choice to make a sprite in this way ends up accurately capturing the corporate mascot appeal of the electric mouse, and I don't know whether hand-drawn sprites would have managed to do that, even if they were more authentically SRB2. That being said, the toy-like appeal of the traced model could have so easily dissipated if it was poorly used. Awkward posing in animations, missing animations, mismatched particle effects. I don't know where this model is from, but I doubt any official source would just so happen to have all of the animations needed for SRB2 already passed out. Luckily, these potential complications are mostly sidestepped. I think Pikachu's posing and reactions are pretty spot on, and there aren't any animations where I felt they were meant to be used in a different context. If you aren't quite following, what I mean to say is that I didn't feel like his hanging animation, as one example, was an awkward reuse of an attack animation, another random example, from whatever Pokemon game the model was ripped from. There's even a couple of clever references, like his death animation causing him to faint and re-enter his Pokeball, or how the Continue sprite is a max revive. The particle effects and his abilities are just about the only graphical area that I'd say he gets a bit hit and miss in. I love the movement line effect on Iron Tail and the ghosting with Double Team, but I think Volt Tackle and Thunder look a bit cheap comparatively. Maybe fewer individual lining effects in favour of a few stronger, larger, brighter ones would work better in both cases, at least in my opinion. As long as you can get past the difference in art style, it's a strong graphical performance, but in my opinion, it's matched, or maybe even surpassed, by the auditory experience. PikaJade has gone above and beyond and has replaced several sound effects and jingles with equivalents from across the Pokemon franchise. If you're a fan, then you'd probably be able to say where exactly these have been lifted from, but because my experiences with the franchise is limited to a few of the movies that end up on Netflix, and these two games, I cannot. Instead, I can only express my surprise at just how many sound effects have seen changes. A fair number of mods do this, but it's fair to say that Pikachu goes a step further. Invincibility and speed sneakers have seen changes, the level end theme is new, and Pikachu is comparatively chatty when put aside the eerily silent vanilla cast. None of that is particularly extraordinary. But I've seen very few mods introduce new music for every single boss in the game, few mods that change the continue and game over jingles, and this is definitely the first mod I've seen that changes the collapse and bridge theme. If the graphical flourishes don't win you over, then the auditory ones absolutely should. I have no shame in admitting that I probably think more highly of Pikachu's visuals than I should, purely because of their attachment to all of these audio changes. For a character whose closest contact with the platforming genre is Super Smash Bros., and has a moveset centered on an ability almost unrecognizable to its original, Pikachu is a pretty fun character. I wouldn't go so far as to say that he's amazing, at least on the gameplay front, but he is fun enough to justify at least a playthrough, and the extra personality afforded by the graphics and audio is worthy of praise. If you're looking for an electric-based character to play as, Inazuma is better even divorced from the rest of the Silverhorn mod, and Surge is another fun one to play as, but Pikachu is sure to be a blast for any Pokemon fan. And statistically, that is a demographic that most of you viewers will fall into, and you'll probably get much more out of this than I did, even if I did enjoy my time. With that said, I hope you enjoyed the video, and ciao.